In 2026, the global healthcare AI market reached $50.7 billion. This is a massive structural shift toward enterprise infrastructure across the entire medical sector. This capital reallocation is driven by hard financial metrics. Healthcare organizations are now realizing an average return of $3.20 for every dollar they invest in these systems. But those returns are currently coming from a very specific subset of tasks. The bulk of this financial utility is driven by operational triage and ambient clinical documentation, not direct patient intervention. To see where machine learning is actually intervening in medical science, we have to look at the pharmaceutical sector, which has been trapped in a decades-long productivity paradox known as Eroom's law. This graph illustrates Eroom's law. Since 1950, pharmaceutical R&D costs have been climbing exponentially, while the number of new drug approvals per $1 billion spent has consistently dropped by half every 9 years. AI platforms are actively reversing this trend by compressing target identification pipelines. When in silico medicine developed the ISM-001055 molecule, they bypassed the traditional timeline of 6 to 8 years and over $100 million. They went from target identification to Phase 2A clinical trials in just 18 months and $6 million. Finding a target molecule is a closed-system problem. Evaluating a living patient in an emergency department is an open-system environment. Deploying diagnostic AI into live clinical workflows produces very different results. While these platforms excel in retrospective validation and fixed target discovery, those metrics do not translate to prospective clinical performance. Deploying algorithms into live medical environments requires an entirely different method of evaluation. You frequently hear claims of diagnostic AI achieving superhuman accuracy. That accuracy is almost exclusively an artifact of fixed, curated, retrospective research environments, where the data is already cleaned and categorized. When you expose those same models to real-world clinical noise and subtle shifts in how questions are framed, their performance degrades severely. A study published in JAMA Network Open tested leading large language models on standard clinical scenarios. On the left, the model performed with high accuracy. On the right, researchers inverted the logic of the question. By simply changing the correct answer to none of the other answers, the model's accuracy plummeted by over a third. This fragility extends to missing information. A study in NEJM AI evaluated how these systems behave in dynamic environments, where data is incomplete and follow-up questions are required. The researchers observed a phenomenon known as uncertainty committal. When presented with clinical ambiguity, these machine learning models rigidly lock into a single diagnosis. Unlike an attending physician, who adaptively updates their reasoning as new test results arrive, the algorithm commits early and refuses to adjust. This rigid commitment directly correlates with a 50% under-triage rate observed when AI models were run through emergency department simulations. Current models lack genuine clinical reasoning when faced with ambiguity. Unsupervised deployment of these tools without a human override is a direct and immediate hazard to patient safety. The technical failures of the algorithms are compounding a secondary problem: the behavioral vulnerabilities of the clinicians using them. A cross-sectional study in PLOS Digital Health quantified a massive discrepancy between clinical excitement for these tools and actual technical literacy. The data shows that 86.5% of healthcare professionals believe AI will transform medicine. Yet only 20.3% feel they are technically informed about how its underlying mechanisms work. Interestingly, clinicians over 50 demonstrated significantly higher AI literacy than the under 35 cohort. This lack of formal training fuels shadow AI, the unauthorized use of consumer-grade models for actual patient care. Only 15 to 16% of healthcare organizations currently enforce clear AI governance policies. In organizations that don't support AI tools, 40% of clinicians are utilizing these non-compliant models anyway. This creates what is known as the dis-skilling paradox, an issue highlighted in recent clinical decision support data from Wolters Kluwer. Of the clinicians who are active AI users, 48% utilize the tools for clinical decision support. Yet 81% of those exact same professionals report low to moderate trust in the systems they are relying on. Health systems are systematically generating automation bias. Clinicians are being forced by high workloads to rely on algorithmic outputs they neither understand nor trust. steadily eroding their independent diagnostic competence over time. Governing adaptive machine learning models with static point-in-time clearance pathways, like the legacy 510(k) process, is regulatory incompatible. The software is designed to continuously change. The regulations were designed for devices that stay exactly the same. To address this, the FDA has formally transitioned from its legacy Quality System Regulation to the new Quality Management System Regulation, or QMSR. The QMSR legally harmonizes FDA device requirements directly with the international standard ISO 13485, mandating continuous risk management across the entire product lifecycle. Concurrently, Congress enabled the Predetermined Change Control Plan, or PCCP. This is a new regulatory architecture designed specifically for adaptive algorithms, broken into 3 steps. The description of modifications allows manufacturers to legally pre-specify future algorithm updates within their initial submission, such as retraining the model on larger patient datasets. The modification protocol dictates the exact mathematical validation procedures the software must pass. Finally, the impact assessment mandates automated rollback triggers if the model's performance degrades in production. This total product lifecycle architecture abandons the illusion of a finished software product. It treats clinical AI as a continuously evolving system that requires mathematically verifiable governance at every stage of its deployment. Complying with macro-level FDA regulations is only the baseline. Health systems must build specific machine learning operations architectures locally to deploy these tools safely. The first mandate for enterprise deployment is enforcing independent, local algorithmic validation before allowing any model to integrate with the hospital network. Relying on retrospective vendor data or external multi-center trial results is insufficient because those datasets fail to account for local variables. Algorithms break when they encounter unique demographic variations, distinct imaging hardware calibrations, and the idiosyncratic clinical documentation styles of a specific hospital. The second mandate is the implementation of dynamic post-market monitoring, fully aligned with the FDA's QMSR standards. Hospitals must engineer automated safety rollbacks directly into their electronic health record architecture. The moment the system detects performance drift or an elevated false positive rate, it must instantly trigger a rollback to a baseline version or revert entirely to a human-only workflow. The third mandate is the establishment of multidisciplinary AI governance councils to permanently eradicate shadow AI from the clinic. These councils must have the authority to approve and decommission software and must be composed of clinical leaders, legal counsel, data engineers, and patient privacy officers. To execute this, health systems must urgently replace vendor-led software tutorials with accredited clinical informatics programs. Teaching clinicians to critically evaluate machine learning outputs and recognize clinical hallucinations is the only structural defense against the descaling paradox. Bridging the gap between retrospective AI hype and prospective clinical reality requires abandoning passive technology deployment. Health systems must adopt continuous, locally validated oversight to ensure that the human expert remains the ultimate, uncompromised clinical authority.